Hi knitting peeps, welcome or welcome back to my channel, bopeepknits. My name is Lisa and today's video is going to be a chatty knitting video. I wanted to do something a little bit different. We might call this series Sip and Knit, where we sip our drinks, we knit our knits, and we just hang out and chat. I'm knitting up my Monday sweater by Petite Knit, and today's video topic is going to be my knitting journey so far as a beginner knitter. We're halfway through the year, so I thought that this is a great opportunity to share with you what I've knitted so far, some techniques that I've learned through those projects, and also talk about some tips that I've learned to share with other beginner knitters out there. If you like this kind of content, please make sure to subscribe. I would love for us to become knitting friends. And without further ado, grab your sip, grab your knits, and let's get started. So let's chat about how I first started knitting. I first learned how to knit at 10 years old. My mom was actually the person who taught me how to knit. She taught me the basics, like just long tail cast on, how to knit, how to purl. And ever since that brief introduction, I did not pick up those needles ever again. I didn't knit anything at all. I remember vaguely working on a scarf, but I never ended up finishing it. And I don't know what kind of came over me like at the end of December, early January of this year, but I suddenly was drawn to knitting. My interest in knitting definitely kind of came out of the blue. I really don't know what kind of compelled me to want to knit. I don't have friends who knit, and I wasn't exposed to social media knitting content. So honestly, I have no idea what kind of came over me, but I'm really glad that I just suddenly had that interest. And the timing kind of worked out because it was winter time. I was staying at home a lot because it was winter, but also because of my dog Kai's condition. At the time, her health was declining and the vets were saying that she didn't have much longer to live. So, I was trying to spend as much time as I could with her. Knitting really helped me bring a sense of comfort, and it was also something to do while I was at her side during those really tough times. So I was watching YouTube videos just to refresh my memory on how to knit because it was so long ago. And I came across a video from Tiffany Liu. I think she had like this intro to knitting series on her channel. So I watched one of the videos and it just kind of all came back to me. So from watching her video, I remembered that I knew how to knit and how to purl. And she talked about two different ways to cast on. I didn't know how to do a basic cast on because my mom taught me how to do a long tail cast on. But the way that she was showing us how to do a long tail cast on was different from how my mom taught me. I just decided to ask my mom how to cast on. And she gave me a little bit of a refresher. And it turns out that my mom taught me how to do a long tail cast on left-handed. So that was, definitely strange because neither of us are left-handed, but that was the way that she taught me. And that is the way that feels most comfortable to me. So even though I am right-handed, I cast on left-handed. But yeah, it all just kind of clicked after that like mini tutorial from my mom and also watching Tiffany Liu's video. And I just asked my mom if I could borrow some of her knitting needles and some of her yarn just so I can like figure out what knitting supplies I should get, if I should invest in metal knitting needles or bamboo knitting needles. So I'm really grateful that she let me borrow her supplies. And I just never looked back after that. It's honestly amazing how much you retain as a kid. Like I did not expect to remember anything from my knitting era as a kid, which was very short-lived. So in terms of how many projects I've completed, I finished 10. 4 of them are gift knits and 6 are knits that I made for myself. I thought that I would have more finished objects, honestly, but I did learn this about myself, and that is I am quite a slow knitter. I really like taking breaks with my knitting. Knitting marathons are not good for your health, and I just want to make sure that I take care of myself so that I will have the ability to knit even when I am older. Like, you don't want anything to happen to your hands or your wrists or your arms. So, taking breaks definitely slows my knitting down. I am also employed, so that takes away a lot of my time. Unfortunately, I would love to knit a lot more, but of course, when you work a 9 to 5, that just takes up so much time and energy away from you. And so I knit when I can, you know? And another factor that kind of slows down my knitting, I do knit in English style. I have tried to learn how to do continental, but my hands just don't work that way. So I don't think that that is in the cards for me. So I'm not finishing projects as quickly as I had hoped back when I first started knitting in January. But that just means that, whenever I do complete something, I will cherish it so much more. So let's chat about the things that I've knitted so far and the techniques that I've learned from those projects. So from my previous knowledge, I learned how to longtail cast on, knit, and purl to form stockinette stitches. But obviously, as I continued to knit, I learned so many more techniques. And the first project that I ever worked on was a self-drafted scarf that I knitted for my sister. You probably saw it in the very first episode of my knitting podcast. But I originally knitted my sister's scarf in stockinette completely, which was a rookie mistake, right? Because stockinette, as we all know, curls into itself because of the unequal tension. And so I had to frog that scarf and completely restart. And I chose to knit the scarf in mistake rib instead. So I learned how to knit the mistake rib stitch from that project. And I also learned how to do a cast off because I never finished a project before. I only learned how to cast on. I worked on 3 beanies after working on that scarf. 2 of them were newborn beanies, and 1 of them was for my younger brother. And so when you work on beanies, you have to learn how to decrease to form the crown. And so that was a skill that I picked up from my beanie knitting. I learned how to do a knit 2 together. And the newborn beanies were actually knitted flat, probably because they were quite small. So I knitted the newborn beanies flat, and then I learned how to seam the sides together using mattress stitch. So that was another technique that I learned. For one of the beanies, I actually created and attached a mini pom-pom, so that was another exciting skill. For my brother's beanie, I learned how to knit in the round using the invisible join method, and that just kind of was the biggest game changer ever because I knitted up that beanie, I think, in like 2 days. It was so fast. So the next couple of projects were a little bit more advanced for me. I kind of felt like I wanted to slowly progress my knitting skills a bit. So I decided to take on the Petite Knit Sophie scarf. And at that time, the Sophie scarf was going viral on TikTok. Like, everyone and anyone who was knitting up the Sophie scarf. So I was very curious. I wanted to see what all the hype was about. So I bit the bullet, purchased the pattern, and just kind of went for it. I was a little bit worried that it might have been too difficult as a beginner, but I don't think that it was. And through that project was how I actually learned how to form increases and decreases, as well as incorporating I-cord edging in a pattern. After working on the Sophie scarf, I actually worked on the Sophie hood. So that pattern is quite similar to the Sophie scarf. except that, you know, you have to form the hood using more increases and decreases. And you seam up the back of the hood using mattress stitch. Those two projects actually helped me gain some confidence in my knitting skills. So at that point in time, I felt ready to knit my very first sweater. So my very first sweater is the Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller. It is such a popular pattern for beginners, so I'm sure you may have heard of it before. The pattern is completely free, and honestly, I am so thankful for that pattern. Like, Florence really blessed the knitting community with that pattern because it is so well written, and she has an accompanying video as well that kind of walks through the important steps of the pattern. And so with the pattern and the video by my side, I was able to knit up a pretty nice sweater as a beginner, and I was so proud of myself. And Florence is MVP. Like, I couldn't have done it without her. So through that step-by-step sweater, I learned how to knit a sweater with a raglan construction, and it is not that hard, you know? I was a little bit intimidated, but the video and the pattern are just so thorough that you really don't feel like you are working on something difficult. After a successful project like my step-by-step sweater, I gained a little bit more confidence in my knitting skills. So I thought that, you know what? Why don't I take on knitting a cardigan, because I did so great with my sweater. That was a battle, a battle and a half. I worked on the Maggie cardigan by bopeepknits, and you may have seen my project vlog on my channel, and if you haven't, please check it out. You can see me just struggle at every step with the Maggie cardigan. It was definitely out of my realm as a beginner knitter, and this might be a little bit, you know, of a controversial opinion, I guess, but some people really like to challenge themselves as a beginner. They like to go for the super difficult patterns, you know, and I understand that is how you learn. For me, I like to gradually learn things. I don't want to be too much out of my comfort zone. And I felt like the Maggie cardigan pattern for me, with where I was as a knitter, was just a little too much. Like, I think it was like 2 or 3 steps further ahead of where I was as a knitter. And so that was really hard to kind of like learn all these new techniques and also have to like push yourself to finish it. I don't know. It was really difficult for me. But eventually I made it out. Looking back, I am very happy that I took on that challenge because it really gave me so much perspective on how garments are made. And that's just what I really enjoy about knitting. It was a difficult project, but I learned so many techniques and skills, and I'm able to take on that knowledge and apply that to other projects or learn different variations of the techniques that I learned and like use that for other projects. So I just really like that about knitting. I think I will continue to just kind of gradually, you know, take small steps towards the difficult projects, but I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll feel a little bit chaotic one day and just pick like, I don't know, color work pattern. After working on my Maggie cardigan, I worked on the Alice top by bopeepknits, which was my first summer knit. It was also my first time working on a pattern that was bottom up. And at first, knitting bottom up, like, it's fine. You're not really working on anything. It's just knitting in the round. To form the top of the top, you work separate panels, the front and the back panels. And to work the front panel, you have to split in the middle to form the V-neck of the top. So that's the like general construction of the Alice top. So through that project, I learned that I don't really like knitting bottom up. It's just really annoying. It's not that it's hard, but it's just difficult to try things on and to make any adjustments that that you want in a garment. And I'm probably going to stay away from bottom up patterns from now on. The last finished object that I have to talk about is my sabai top. With the way that it was constructed, it is different from how the Alice top was constructed. It is knit top down. You do knit separate panels and then you join them in the round after forming the armholes. But yeah, the process was pretty seamless to me. I wasn't really confused. I was able to make the modifications that I wanted to make. And so I overall really enjoyed the sabai top, and I enjoyed working on all of my projects. You know, I think with knitting, with every project that you knit, you're going to learn so many new techniques and skills, and you continue to accumulate that knowledge. I am very happy with all of the 10 projects that I worked on so far this year, and I can't wait to knit up more things. Since I started my knitting journey in January, I have learned so many tips and tricks, so I want to share them with you as a beginner knitter. I don't know everything, but I do want to share what I have learned so far. So number one, you do not need to spend a lot of money with this hobby. I know that as a beginner, the information out there can be quite overwhelming. There are all these notions and like all these gadgets that people say that you need, but honestly, you just need knitting needles and yarn. That's like the bare minimum, right? And as for knitting needles, there are so many types out there that you can buy. And my tip for that is before you do make an investment in your knitting needles, do your research and try to see if there's any opportunities to borrow knitting needles. That way you can try out as many different types as you can. And from testing out all these different types of needles, you can figure out which materials and which needle sizes, and whether or not you like straight needles or circular needles, whether or not you need an interchangeable set or a fixed set. And so taking the time to kind of figure out what feels best for you, what fits your budget, I think that is super, super important. So once you figure out, like, you got your needles, you got your yarn that you want to use, there are some notions out there that I think will really help you out with your knitting. So the notions that I would recommend to beginners are stitch markers. I think they are so incredibly helpful with keeping track of decreases, increases. They mark the beginning of round for you. They're just so helpful, right? And you don't even need to spend money on them. I think a measuring tape is essential, so that is definitely on the notion list. You do need to measure your garment to see, how big things are. You need to measure your body. You need to measure your swatch. So having a measuring tape is A1 for your knitting. Another notion that I would say is quite important would be scissors. You do need a way to cut your yarn. So those are all the notions that I would strongly recommend for beginner knitters out there. The second tip that I have is to hold your needles together when you cast on, especially if you do a long tail cast on. And by doing this, it will allow a more stretchy and looser edge to your knitting. And so that way, after you're done casting on, you are able to have a little bit more room when you insert your needle into the stitches. So how that works is that you would hold your two needles parallel to each other, and then you just act as if it is one needle when you cast on, and you just cast on as per usual. Tip number 3, whether you print out your pattern or you have it digitally on your iPad or laptop, I think it's always a great idea to highlight the size that you are knitting in and any important information that you would need. This ensures that you're knitting the correct number of stitches, that you're knitting the correct number of rows, and just prevents any confusion in general. My last tip is don't be afraid of German short rows. As a beginner knitter, you hear all this stuff about German short rows and it sounds super scary, but I promise you it is not as intimidating as people make it out to be. German short rows are pretty important. They help you shape the back of the neck for sweaters and for tops, and this ensures like a better fit. And I don't know if like everybody needs German short rows, but for me, I find that German short rows really help with the fit of garments on my body. And so it sounds and looks intimidating, but I promise you, it is not as hard as it looks. Like, it is not that bad, I promise. Thank you for watching my first Sip and Knit video. I really hope that you enjoyed knitting with me. If you liked it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up so that I know that you would like more Sip and Knit videos in the future. Until we see each other next time, take care and happy knitting!